All right, so welcome everybody to our info session today. We are here from the National Air and Space Museum, specifically the Explainers Program. So we're going to introduce ourselves. We are a team of 3 here, and then we're going to tell you all about what it means to be an explainer. And then we'll have a Q&A session at the end. Now, that doesn't mean you have to necessarily hold all your questions until the end. If you have a relevant question that comes up as we're going through anything, feel free to drop it into the chat. I will be monitoring that as well. So if you have a question that comes up, feel free to ask. But again, we will have that specific time at the end just for questions. So to start out, my name is Melissa. I am one of the 3 Explainers Program coordinators. I started with the program about a year and a half ago. Really enjoy getting to work with all of our students and getting to teach all of them about the cool stuff in our museum and watching everybody sort of learn and grow. It's kind of the fun thing of supervising a student program. And then I'm going to toss it over to Kelly.
Hi, I'm Kelly Harrow, another one of the 3 Explainers Program coordinators. I started work with this program in the summer of 2019. So I worked with the Explainers Corps before the pandemic. Then the transition during our shutdown because of COVID and also because of the renovations downtown, and then into this new phase for the program, which has us in a sort of hybrid space where we have both our traditional on-site programs and virtual programs added to that suite as well. So it's been a really dynamic, ever-changing period of time to work here with a great group of students, which you will learn a lot more about in a moment here. And then Christian.
Hi, I'm Christian. I'm the 3rd of 3 Explainers Program coordinators. I'm actually joining you live from our Explainers Lounge at the National Mall building, downtown DC. And I joined the Explainers Program myself in just a little bit less than a year ago now, after about a decade working in museum education over at the Natural History Museum across the mall. So echoing what everyone else has said, it's a really great program. You get the opportunity to learn something new every day, which is not something that every job features. And yeah, excited to share with you a little bit more about what we do.
All right, so I'm going to hand it back to Kelly here to explain a little bit more about what the Explainers Program is.
All right, up my slides, and Melissa, got a thumbs up, looks good. Awesome. All right. So yeah, we're here to talk about the Explainers Program, as you've likely gleaned. I just want to hit one thing really hard off the top here. We're going to refer to it throughout this presentation and the whole discussion. We're going to keep using this term program, the Explainers Program, but I just want to hit here up front that this is a job. I think sometimes with that name, Explainers Program, that gets lost in the sauce a little bit. Explainers Program is a paid staff position at the Smithsonian Institution. So it's one of its greatest virtues, I would say. So that being said, a little bit about the National Air and Space Museum for folks who may not be familiar. We are one museum with 2 campuses. So we have our campus downtown on the National Mall. It is brand new right now. I don't know if anyone on this call has had an opportunity to go and see the new galleries, see the new museum space. Half of the museum reopened with a floor to ceiling, nuts to exhibit cases, total transformation in October of last year. So we have, I don't know, maybe 8 to 10 brand new, beautiful galleries there, a beautiful gift shop. It's an awesome space. And then the other half of the museum will be opening in phases between now and about 2026. Our other campus is out by the Dulles Airport in Chantilly, Virginia. It's called the Udvar-Hazy Center. It's actually, the museum itself is in an enormous airplane hangar. So it is a space where we can keep some of our larger aircraft and spacecraft. You see in the picture here, this is the Space Shuttle Discovery. We also have a Concorde there. We have the SR-71 Blackbird. So some really cool aircraft and spacecraft out at Hazy. And we do have explainers who work at both locations. Usually our explainers will pick one home base location, but there is flexibility to work between the two spaces if you're interested as well. So the National Air and Space Museum is one of the most visited museums in the world, with well over 8 million visitors annually. We have 68,000 artifacts. I'm sure at this point that number is even larger. This PowerPoint was made a year or so ago, so we grow by hundreds, perhaps even thousands each year. Incorporated in the museum, NASM is the acronym we use for it. So incorporated in NASM, we have archives, a restoration hangar, which is out at Hazy, IMAX theater, planetarium, lots of galleries, and more. And touched on some of the highlights at Hazy. Downtown, we have, of course, the original Wright Flyer. We have Neil Armstrong's suit and other artifacts from the Apollo 11 and other Apollo missions. We have really cool historical aircraft, as well as some modern recreational, very cool and quirky planes and space artifacts as well. And then I spoke a little bit about our revitalization project downtown. But again, we are a brand new museum downtown as a result of renovation, and will continue to be opening new components of the museum in the years to come. So an exciting time to work at NASM for sure. Here is a sort of quick nuts and bolts stuff about the Explainers program. There's our mission statement. Explainers promote an interest in space, aeronautical science, technology, and the museum's collection by hiring high school and college students to deliver science demonstration and facilitate activities. And then some contact information for you there as well. You can find all of this information on our Handshake account, which will give you even more info, or on our webpage. So who are explainers? Explainers are all 100% of our explainers core are active students. So one of the primary requirements of the program is you must be enrolled while you are working in a degree granting or diploma granting program. So we have students as young as 16 high school students from the area who join the core. And then we have college students, undergrad, grad students. We even have some who join us from PhD programs. So as long as you are a student of any kind, you're eligible to participate in the program, but that is a important designation that is required. 16 and older, like I said, I'll hit one more time, paid NASM staff. This is not an internship, and it's not a volunteer opportunity. So it is part-time work, just like you might pick up, in customer service, food service elsewhere, except for your job is very, very cool. You work in the museum, working with our visitors all day, and you work for the Smithsonian, which is a great line item to have on your resume. We have students of all backgrounds and majors. It is not by any means a requirement that you come to us with a background in aviation, astronomy, anything like that. We certainly have students who become interested in the program because they come from STEM majors and STEM backgrounds, or sort of have a natural interest and affinity for the content of the museum. But we also have plenty of students, who come from majors like communications, international relations, education. We accept all majors. In fact, we encourage it. We like to throw the net wide. We find that a diversity of students brings a diversity of perspectives and strengths to the explainer team. So we really welcome you to apply, even if you don't see yourself as maybe necessarily a STEM person in your academic life. So explainers do work, as I mentioned, at either museum location, and there is a cohort of virtual explainers as well. Those students work 100% virtually. They go to school across the country. So we have students who are in our virtual cohort from Colorado, Massachusetts, Nashville, all over the place, and then they help support our virtual programming. For students who go to school in the DMV, in the DC area, I do think that working on site is a better fit for you than the virtual program. It's much greater opportunity for hours for on-site explainers than there are for virtual. However, if you know people who go to school elsewhere, or perhaps you're joining this info session from a school that is not in DC, the virtual explainers program is an option that is available to you. So what do explainers do? Explainers run a suite of programs at the museum that includes what you see on the screen here. So the biggest portion of explainer programming is what we call discovery stations. Those are carts that go out on the floor of the museum. You see some great pictures on the slide of discovery carts in action. Those carts have real artifacts on them, experiments, demonstrations, toys, things to help bring the STEM content of the exhibit galleries to life for visitors. So instead of just reading the static exhibit text, you actually have these fantastic educators, the explainers, who teach it to you in engaging, interactive, question-driven ways. Discovery stations are designed to be informal learning opportunities. So some visitors may stop by for just 1 or 2 minutes. You see the spacesuit there. They might just want a picture with the spacesuit and to try on the glove, and then they go on their way. We love those visitors. And some visitors may stay and talk to you for 25 minutes. They may want to know every single thing you know about the spacesuit, and we love those visitors as well. So the discovery stations are designed to support a whole range of sort of visitor curiosity and interest level. We have discovery stations that cover nearly every topic in the museum. We have history stations like the Wright brothers, our Saturn V rocket station, which is about the space race era. We have physics stations like our Principles of Flight station, astronomy stations like black holes, transiting exoplanets. And then we have our sort of more object-based discovery stations like the spacesuit that you see there. Next, explainers run what we call interactives. Those are primarily out at the Udvar-Hazy Center. They are some simulators that the explainers support, and our Cessna, which is an aircraft that visitors are actually able to get into and touch the display, play with the instrumentation. Explainers run demonstrations, which are slightly more formal, scripted shows. Those are commonly done for reserved groups, so school groups, scout groups, tour groups who reserve an experience with an explainer. They join us either at the museum or virtually. They join us via Zoom, and we run one of our shows for them. So we have a Forces of Flight show and a Living and Working in Space show and an ever popular paper airplane contest. We do also run some drop-in demonstrations throughout the day on weekends. Perhaps those will expand as our explainers team expands as well. Explainers have the awesome opportunity to assist with special events and family days at the museum. We have some really incredible special programs throughout the year, including our big Halloween event, Air and Scare, and a huge flying event at the Udvar-Hazy Center in June that's called Innovations in Flight. There's also a bunch of other outreach, special events, things that pop up throughout the year. Explainers go to air shows, expos. We've gone to AwesomeCon in the past, area schools, you name it. They help our astronomy team with solar observing outside with telescopes. So they, in the past, have taken telescopes out onto the National Mall. Right now, we're doing over at the Eisenhower Memorial, but we also take telescopes for outreach, things like that. As I mentioned, we support programming virtually, so that really helps to expand our reach. We can work with classrooms in Alaska, Brazil, around the world, truly, to bring the museum's stories to wherever they may find you. And then I've got special events on there twice because it's extra cool. So there you go. Here is a quick video of an explainer in action, just to give you a little snapshot of what they do.
When astronauts venture out into space and even to Mars, they need proper protection in order to do it safely. one of the most important things that astronauts are going to need is a spacesuit. So this spacesuit is specifically made for the space shuttle era, but spacesuits like it need to provide for the astronauts. One of the things that we need to take into consideration is comfort. So imagine you're out there on your mission, possibly on Mars, you're walking around. So these spacesuits are actually completely sealed. That means all that body heat from your body is actually going to get trapped inside of the suit. So in order to mitigate that, spacesuits like it will need a kind of a cooling garment, such as this liquid cooling garment right over here, in order to make sure that the astronaut is as comfortable as possible inside of the suit. Another thing that the astronauts are going to need is to be able to have a living environment or an atmosphere inside of the suit. So while we're here on Earth, we have all this air all around us that's pushing down on our internal body pressure that's pushing back out, kind of equaling itself out. But when we're out there in space and maybe on Mars, we're facing a different environment out there. So that's why we need the suit, which is completely sealed and pressurized in order to counteract the internal body pressure of the astronaut in order to create a living atmosphere inside of the suit. And finally, since we are talking about how important pressure is for the spacesuit, we actually need a protective layer on the outside to make sure that the suit remains pressurized. So layers such as this one, this is called the thermal micrometeorite garment shell for this specific suit, kind of lines the outside of the spacesuit like a protection so that when the astronauts go out on their spacewalks, or maybe when they're out there on Mars, they're able to be protected from the harsh elements of space. So these are some of the different aspects that designers need to think about when we're looking forward to future exploration on Mars.
Awesome. So that was our fabulous explainer, Kim. As you can see, we work with authentic artifacts. That's a real spacesuit there. And all of the training, the content knowledge that you need for the job is provided through on-the-job training. I'll talk a little bit about that in a slide or two, but all of that fabulous information that Kim was talking about, she didn't need to know before becoming an explainer. We teach it to you on the job, and then you truly inspire tens of thousands of visitors with that same information over the course of your work with us. Nope, let's start again. There we go. So to come work with us, just a couple logistics details we want to share. We do require from college students, I believe everyone on this call likely is college grad, undergrad, PhD students. We require 4 hours of work on weekdays. So that's Monday through Friday. We do have a fairly robust cohort of high school volunteers who largely fill in our needs on weekends. So we welcome our college explainers to work with us on weekends. It's a great sort of rowdy time on weekends. We have a big group of kids who are in, but our highest need for college students is that availability on weekdays. So the great thing about this program is our flexible scheduling. If you have, class the full day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and you only have a morning class until 11 on Thursdays, you can very specifically request that you work 12 to 5 on Thursdays and maybe all day on Friday, and that will fill, those weekday requirements for you. You tell us around your academic and extracurricular availability when you'd like to work. Let's say it's May and you have a lot of exams, papers, stuff like that coming up. You want to pull back and not work that Friday shift for a couple of weeks to have more study time. You're meeting your requirement with those 12 to 5 shifts on Thursday. You just don't list yourself as available for Fridays that month, and we won't schedule you. So that's a bit more flexibility than your traditional part-time job where you sort of get a set shift, which is yours in perpetuity. You actually get to adjust your shift as needed month to month, provided you're meeting these 2-hour requirements listed here. So we ask you to meet at least 15 hours of availability each month, however those come together. And then again, 4 hours of those being on weekdays. After, beyond those 15 hours of work, you are welcome to work as much as you would like beyond that. You can, we have explainers who work close to 35 hours. You can't work 40 hours, you can't be full-time, but anything below 40 hours, you're welcome to work as much as you'd like, provided you're meeting the minimum. If you go to school here in DC, but you hail from other environs, so you go away for breaks or for the summer, that is a totally normal sort of cyclical part of the program. You just go on leave for the summer and your job is waiting for you when you come back. So that's something we're very used to dealing with. There is a GPA requirement throughout your time with us. You have to maintain a GPA of 2.7 or above. As I mentioned, there is on-site or virtual positions available. If you are in DC, we do encourage you to apply for those on-site positions, but virtual is an option as well. We offer rolling admission, if you will. We have start dates throughout the year. So we'll get a frequently asked question for us is like, when does this start? Or, that sort of thing. It starts whenever you're onboarded. So you don't have to aim for a specific deadline to get your application in. And then with the anticipation of this starting like at the beginning of the summer or the beginning of the school year, our start dates are throughout the year whenever you're hired. And then paid training and professional development on this job. All of your training, content mastery, studying for explainer programming is a built-in part of your workday. So for your first number of shifts with us, you're going to be spending your day working with more experienced explainers, shadowing, observing, practicing the stations, and then doing some independent studying that we call plan work. As you start to master the content and the sort of run of show of the different programs, you'll start assisting a little bit more, taking over, getting your feet wet, actually running the programs on the floor until you feel like you're ready to run them on your own, at which time you request a observation for approval, and one of the three of us will come out, observe you, and either give you the all clear or keep working on it. And you'll start to develop your own sort of portfolio of programs you can run on your own. The great thing about the program is that it's really collaborative. For most of your day, you're either working with another explainer who's training you, or you're training newer explainers on certain stations. So you aren't sort of isolated out in the museum. You're always talking to people, and if it's not another explainer, it's our visitors. You will talk to hundreds of visitors an hour, and every interaction is different. It's a really dynamic position. Truly, when you're out on a discovery station, no conversation with our audiences is the same. You might have a family come up with a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old, and you're trying to teach them how, the Saturn V rocket worked. And then in the next moment, you're at that same station and 2 former NASA engineers come up to watch the station. So you're going to be having a totally different conversation. Your pedagogy and facilitation will be totally different. And that's what the whole day looks like. We also make a point to cycle you through programs throughout the day. You won't be spending 6 hours out just running principles of flight. We switch you around about every hour to hour and a half on different programs. I have some details here about what our application process looks like for folks who are interested. We do require the documentation you see on the left. In order to receive our application form, you can email us at the contact we've provided, and we will send it to you via email. And as I mentioned, we have rolling application deadlines. You can apply whenever. There's no set time you have to apply. We do interview seasonally, so throughout the year. And then I would anticipate at least 2 months between your interview and a start date. That's because we are a part of the federal government. And so hiring does move a little bit slowly. So if you interviewed this month in February, I would not anticipate starting work in March. This would be a position that would likely start for you in late April or May. So just wanted to flag that. And then I have 2 links here. Sometimes folks join us with interest in, more permanent career positions at the Smithsonian, which this is not what the explainers program are. We we are a part-time job for students. But if you are looking for career positions at usajobs.gov is where you'll find those. And then we frequently have students who come to our info sessions interested in internships. And so I've put the Smithsonian internship website up there as well. We are not an internship. We also cannot accommodate students who can only work with us for the summer or one semester. We ask for a 1-year commitment at a minimum to the program. But we do, the Smithsonian at large does have internships for 1 semester for students. So that's where you'll find the information about that. So all of that being said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and invite Melissa to pop back in.
All right, so now I think we are going to send it over to Christian here for a little bit more of an in-depth look at one of our stations, living and working in space. So this one is kind of all about the effects that living and working in space has on your body. So Christian.
Yeah, so unlike Kim, I'm not going to go and do the whole explainer spiel for you. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about like what you can expect to be doing as an explainer on the floor as course of your day. So like we've mentioned, this is one of our discovery stations. If we were doing this for real in the museum, which I encourage you to come visit us and check it out, we would be at the entrance to the One World Connected exhibit, where we have a lovely sight line into the replica of the ISS, the International Space Station's cupola, that visitors can see. And then over here, we're talking about what life is like for our astronauts who live on the ISS. So we have some model things over here, like we've got this model spine and our model ear with our model vestibular system that our explainers use to talk about the impact that gravity can have on our astronauts as they're living and working in space. And then we have some gifts from NASA, some space food that our astronauts are, well, not are eating at this time. They have upgraded a bit the food that they have on the International Space Station, so it doesn't look quite as unappealing as this, which is cheesy potatoes is what I've got here. And delightfully, unrecognizably, this is asparagus. And then over here in the kind of jewel of this discovery station, we have our vacuum pump model and demo that we use to talk about, like Kim was talking about, what would happen if you were to go out into the vacuum of space without a spacesuit on. So I'm going to punch in and just give you that demo real quick. In this scenario, our marshmallow here represents our astronaut. And now we're going to turn on the pump and see what happens. So as you all saw, our astronaut started to inflate as the air from inside the vacuum chamber was being sucked out, and the air within our astronaut was trying to expand to fill that space. And then at one point, the membrane around our astronaut popped, and we started sucking the air out from inside our astronaut as well. So right now, where we are, our astronaut's back at equilibrium. There's no air inside the astronaut, there's no air outside it. So if we were to try to re-enter the International Space Station at this point, here's what would happen. So the moral of this story here is don't leave the space station without your spacesuit. So this is an example of what life can be like as an explainer. Sometimes you get applause once you hit the end of your demo. That's not unusual. It's not every time. And one of the main components is that we want our visitors to have fun. And one of the best ways is for our explainers, our facilitators of these stations to have fun too. So we think this one is a lot of fun, and we hope that you will think so as well. Back to you, Melissa.
Thank you, Christian. All right, so I think now what we are going to do is open things up to any questions that you might have. So we know that we just threw a lot of information at you, but if you have any specific questions about any of the stuff we mentioned or anything we didn't mention, feel free. You can unmute, you can type it into the chat, whatever method suits you best if you have a question for us.
I have a question.
Mhm.
So I'm currently studying abroad, but I plan to be in DC like back around mid to late May. Should I just like apply now, and would I be able to wait until I get back to start, or should I apply a little later?
Yeah, so if you know you're going to be back in the DC area by a certain point, you could certainly start the application process now. Again, unfortunately, our process of hiring and onboarding, as Kelly mentioned, can be a little bit slow because we are a federal entity. So yeah, the earlier you get things in, the better. And we can certainly, if you let us know, I'm not going to be back in town for a little bit, we can accommodate that and just have you have a little bit of a later start date.
All right, thank you.
And then I have a quick question.
Mhm.
Do you mind repeating when the position would start if we were to get the opportunity to start the position?
Yeah, so again, it depends on, we don't have an exact start date. So usually it's about 2 to 3 months. So after we interview you and we tell you we'd like to offer you the position, it's about 2 to 3 months from then.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
So a graduate student who graduates in May. So it probably is not going to be the best fit for you then. We do allow our explainers to work for 6 months after graduation. The trouble with that though is that by the time you'd probably be starting in May, and then you'd be starting that 6 months. And we really do like to get somebody for about a 1-year commitment. Oh, and Kelly got the hourly wage. Good. Anything else?
I guess for folks who are maybe watching the recording, I will say out loud, somebody in the chat asked about hourly wage. Our hourly wage will be starting at the DC minimum wage, which is $16.10. But then there are pay increases for college students and a couple other pay raises. So that's what our high school students get paid, and then college students slightly more. It's not enormously more, but it is more.
I'll just jump in quickly and maybe see if anyone has any more questions. I'm Darnie Samuel, and I am a representative from the American University Career Center. So I just wanted to jump in and verbally thank Kelly, Christian, and Melissa for hosting today's session, and for also opening the session to our DC consortium schools. I do believe we had a few other students from our local schools on as well. So I just wanted to, again, thank you for your time and for sharing this information with our students.
Yeah, and thank you for giving us this opportunity. We've had a lot of American University students that have worked with us in the past, but also we love to get any local college students we can. We've been in sort of a rebuilding period of our explainers at the National Mall building because it was closed for so long, and unfortunately we couldn't offer on-site work. But we're excited to get lots more people back. So
fantastic! Thank you so much.
Any other questions from anyone?
I'll just say also definitely give a little bit more wait time if other folks have questions, but we can also, at a certain point when it feels like no more questions in the general group, we can stop the recording and we can stay on for a little bit longer, and we're here until 1:30. If anybody has questions they want to ask us in a more one-on-one setting that are maybe not as applicable for the group, but a question you might have. So just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, so we got a question here about where you can submit an application. So you can email it to NASM, NASM, explainers program at si.edu. Kind of a lot to remember. You could also go to our page. If you look up explainers program at the National Air and Space Museum, on our page, it will have that contact. So to get an application, you do have to send an email first to that address, and then we will send you the application and all the instructions for the materials to you through there. Thank you, Kelly.
And do you all mind explaining again the in-person and virtual aspect, so students can potentially do both, or do you have to choose one or the other? And again, I know if you're in the area, you highly recommend in person.
Yeah, so we do actually have them as two fairly distinct programs at this point. When we first started this, there was a bit of crossover between the two. It really is kind of one or the other. So either you are doing the virtual programming or you're on site. There's a tiny bit of crossover for on-site explainers. They help us facilitate our virtual demos. But again, that's done from the site itself. So
Thank you so much.